My name is Emery, and for the first time in my life, I finally owned something that belonged entirely to me. A luxury condo. Small, quiet, warm, and bought with my own blood, sweat, and every dollar I saved from years of double shifts. It wasn't inherited, wasn't gifted, and no one helped me. I earned it. But the day I moved in, just when I was supposed to feel safe, my mother and my brother, Calvin, showed up at my door uninvited. They didn't knock gently, they banged like they owned the place. The moment I opened the door, they walked in without permission. My mother's eyes scanned the living room, the furniture, the kitchen, like she was inspecting property she already possessed. Calvin casually opened the fridge, took a drink, and sat on my couch like he lived there. I tried to hide the confusion in my voice when I asked why they were here. My mother turned with a cold, confident expression I had never seen before and said, "Because this is your brother's home, Emery." At first I thought it was a joke. Then she handed me a folder, legal documents, stamped, notarized, and recorded. I felt my heart drop as I flipped through the pages. The condo I paid for, the address I signed for, everything in my name, was now filed legally under Calvin's name. According to those papers, I was only a temporary resident and the rightful owner was him. I could barely breathe. "Mom, I paid for this. Every cent came from me," I said, but she just smiled. A cold, victorious smile that didn't belong to a mother. "So what? You're a girl. You'll get married and leave one day. Property should stay with men. Calvin will take care of it." Calvin leaned back and smirked, telling me to start packing because they'd give me a week, and maybe, if I behaved, I would be allowed to visit. I felt the ground disappear beneath me. My own mother, the woman who should have protected me, was stealing the only thing I had ever built for myself. Every memory of sacrifice, every night of exhaustion, every dream I buried to earn this home, wiped away with a signature. But I didn't scream. I didn't beg. Something in me shattered, and something colder replaced it. I looked at them and said, only 2 words, "Get out." Calvin laughed, asking what I would do if they didn't. I stayed silent, because revenge works best quietly, and if they thought they could take my home, they were about to learn what I was capable of when someone tried to destroy me. They left that night, but not because they respected me, only because Calvin had to celebrate with his friends about his new luxury condo. After the door closed, I collapsed on the floor. I cried until my chest ached and my throat burned. I kept saying the same sentence over and over in my head. How could my own mother do this to me? But tears didn't fix stolen property. Pain didn't rewrite legal documents. And I knew if they were bold enough to show up with papers, it meant they had planned this long before I ever stepped foot inside. The betrayal wasn't sudden. It was prepared. The next morning, I didn't wake up as the same Emery. I woke up cold, calm, and terrifyingly focused. I made coffee, sat at my dining table, and began reading every page of the documents they gave me. There were forged signatures, missing witness information, and filing irregularities. Most people would panic. I smiled, because sloppy thieves make the easiest mistakes. I took pictures of every page, every stamp, every wrong detail, and sent them to my lawyer friend Mason. Within an hour he called back, furious and shocked. "Emery, someone illegally transferred ownership using falsified consent. This isn't just theft, this is real estate fraud." The part that broke me wasn't the fraud. It wasn't Calvin. It was realizing that my mother signed her name on those fake documents. The woman who used to braid my hair, pack my school lunches, and kiss my forehead goodnight had decided her son deserved my home more than I did. But if she thought her betrayal LD make me weak. She didn't raise the right daughter. Mason told me not to confront them, not to fight emotionally. "Let them think they won," he said. "When they feel safe, we strike harder." So I played along. I stopped calling, I stopped arguing, I stayed quiet. 2 days later, Calvin arrived with his friends and a moving truck, announcing loudly to the entire building that he was the new owner of this condo. He brought speakers, drinks, his girlfriend, and turned my peaceful home into a loud celebration. They laughed, drank, and congratulated him for something he hadn't earned. I stood in the hallway, silent, watching him hand out keys to strangers, telling them they would stay any time they wanted. In that moment, I didn't feel sad. I felt something far sharper, because every person walking through that door was another witness, and I would soon make sure they all regretted ever stepping into my home. The next days became a courtroom in slow motion, and I learned that revenge, when done right, is patient and precise. I started by turning every witness into an ally. The building's concierge, an old woman who'd watched me carry groceries up 4 flights when I first moved in, gave me a statement about who had actually signed the delivery logs the day the forged deed was filed. The neighbor from 3B, who'd come to my door asking for sugar months ago and had seen Calvin loitering in the hallway with a stack of papers, agreed to write down the times he'd seen them. I sat across from Mason for hours, laying out every photo, every timestamp, every voice note I'd kept, my mother's offhand comment about men inheriting property, Calvin's boastful video where he bragged about securing the condo, the delivery crew's receipts that didn't match the recorded filing date. We subpoenaed the city's recorder's office records and the notary's sign-in sheets. We pulled CCTV from the building and the neighboring storefronts. Each piece was small: an email, a parking ticket, a grainy clip of Calvin handing envelopes to a stranger, but together they formed a rope. The forger had underestimated the value of routine paperwork and the honesty of neighbors who remember faces and times. Mason filed an emergency injunction that afternoon, an immediate freeze on any transfer and a demand for the notary to produce original records. He also filed criminal complaints for fraud and forgery, and he had enough probable cause to ask the court for temporary possession of the condo while the investigation proceeded. When I signed the last form, my hands didn't tremble. I had tears, yes, tears for the betrayal, but the fear that had once lived in me had been replaced by an icy, pragmatic resolve. While the legal wheels turned, I prepared the house for what would come. I documented everything inside the apartment: receipts, appliance serial numbers, paint swatches, even the tiny scratch on the balcony railing that only I knew about. I told the concierge to log any visitors and to keep the CCTV footage from being overwritten. To everyone who asked why I wasn't confronting my mother in public, I said nothing. Let them think they had won. Let them parade through my living room and hand out keys. Their arrogance would be their undoing. Mason warned me that court orders could take time, and that sometimes the law moved like a glacier, but there was one thing he agreed on without hesitation. The moment an official judge ordered their removal, every single person who had trespassed would be on the record. That record would be lethal. I also arranged discreet security. Mason recommended a locksmith ready to change the locks the second the judge granted temporary possession, and a private process server ready to hand-deliver court papers, while witnesses could corroborate where each person was at specific times. At night, I walked my condo's rooms like a soldier remembering a battlefield. I touched the kitchen counter I'd paid to install, ran my fingers along the windowsill where I'd scribbled reminders during late study nights, and I whispered apologies to the versions of myself who had worked so hard to get here. I imagined the arrogance on Calvin's face when a court bailiff would stand at his shoulder and read him the order. I imagined the quiet in the building when the locksmith who had handed keys to strangers suddenly refused them. But fantasies would not win this for me. Evidence would. So I kept collecting, refining, and locking my case like a safe. The city clerk called one evening to tell me the injunction was on the judge's desk, the notary had been summoned for questioning, and the district attorney's office had opened a file. It all felt surreal, like a slow crescendo. By midnight the following day, Mason said there would be a hearing, a judge with the power to freeze possession. I slept that night with a phone under my pillow and a plan at my side. When the sun rose, I would move from being the woman who had lost everything to the person who would reclaim not just a door, but dignity. The morning of the hearing, I walked into court with the calmness of someone whose heart had already broken, healed, and turned to steel. Calvin arrived wearing sunglasses and a loud grin, his friends whispering behind him like they were walking into a comedy show. My mother sat proudly beside him, holding her purse as if it were a throne. She didn't even look in my direction. When the judge entered, everyone stood. The room fell silent. Silent enough to hear every breath, every nervous shoe tapping the floor. Mason began with evidence so organized, so painfully accurate, that even the court clerk widened his eyes. He projected the forged documents on the screen. He pointed out mismatched signatures, missing witness IDs, and the notary's absence from official logs. Then he presented statements from neighbors, CCTV timestamps, and the delivery logs proving I had paid for everything, from the flooring to the appliances to the closing costs. The judge's face grew colder and harder with every new page. Calvin's smile started to fade. My mother's fingers tightened around her purse. And when Mason revealed video of Calvin handing keys to strangers, laughing that he got the condo for free because Mom knew the right people, the courtroom froze. Calvin's posture collapsed. Then the judge spoke, calm, direct, unmistakably final. The transfer was suspended, the deed was under fraud investigation, and full possession of the condo was returned to me immediately. Anyone currently occupying the property was considered trespassing. The judge signed the order in front of everyone. Calvin's jaw dropped. My mother finally turned toward me, and for the first time, there was no confidence, no control, no superiority, just fear that her plan had unraveled in public. The bailiff handed them both copies of the order. Mason leaned toward me and whispered, "Let's go home." But it wouldn't end there, because returning was only half the battle. Removal was the rest. We drove straight to the condo with the locksmith, the court order, and a process server. The hallway echoed with music and laughter when we arrived. Calvin's friends were still celebrating. I walked to my own door with the bailiff behind me. When the music stopped, the silence inside was thick. Calvin opened the door, expecting to see another friend. Instead, he saw a uniform, a locksmith, my lawyer, and me. He tried to laugh it off, pretending the court order was a misunderstanding, but the bailiff stepped forward, voice firm, reading the legal notice out loud. Every person inside froze. The locksmith started removing the lock. Calvin tried to shove him, but the bailiff blocked him. My mother arrived minutes later, breathless, insisting that family disputes didn't require legal violence. Mason simply pointed to the order, signed, stamped, and non-negotiable. One by one, officers escorted every guest out of my living room. Boxes, bags, shoes, bottles. Everything was pushed to the hallway. Strangers who had been celebrating suddenly walked out in silence, heads down, like thieves caught under a spotlight. When the locksmith installed the new lock and handed the keys to me, not my mother, not Calvin, I felt the truth settle inside my bones. I had taken my home back. But justice wasn't finished. The fraud charges were still open, and both of them were now under investigation. The condo was mine again, but the future would be theirs to face. That night, my mother stood in the hallway begging me to handle this like family and drop the case. Calvin pleaded, swearing he didn't know the documents were fake. I looked at both of them, the two people who expected loyalty while giving me betrayal. Then I closed the door in their faces. No screaming, no speeches, just silence. For weeks after that night, the hallway outside my door stayed quiet. Too quiet. No more drunken laughter, no more music, no one treating my home like a prize they won. Calvin stopped showing his face in the building, and when he did, T was always fast, always with sunglasses on, as if he didn't want anyone recognizing him. My mother tried calling at first, leaving messages filled with excuses, guilt, manipulation, anything she thought might soften me. "We're family. Calvin didn't mean it, let's forget this happened." But every message sounded less like love and more like desperation. I saved them all. Because courtrooms don't rely on memories, they rely on proof. When the district attorney's office called me to testify, I didn't hesitate. I walked into that courtroom like a woman who no longer feared losing anything. I had already lost my family, what else could they take? Calvin sat at the defense table wearing a suit that didn't fit his arrogance anymore. My mother sat behind him, shaking, clutching tissues she never offered me when I cried. The prosecutor laid out every piece of evidence: fake signatures, missing notary logs, key transfers, witness testimonies, Calvin's own recorded bragging. My mother covered her face with her hands when they played his voice in the courtroom. "Emery's too naive. Mom figured out how to put the condo under my name. She'll cry, but who cares? It's mine now." There was no defense, there was no misunderstanding. There was only greed, and greed leaves fingerprints on everything it touches. Calvin took a plea deal: fraud, forgery, attempted illegal transfer of property. He avoided jail, but the judge sentenced him to fines so large he would spend years paying them off. His bank account was frozen, his car repossessed, and the condo was legally confirmed to be mine alone. My mother was ordered into mandatory restitution hearings for assisting in the fraudulent transfer. The court stripped her name from every document she tried to forge. The judge said something I will never forget: "Family does not give you the right to steal. Blood is not a license for betrayal." When it was over, I walked out alone, not because I was lonely, but because I was finally free. I went back to my condo, opened the windows, and let every room breathe again. That night, I sat on my balcony overlooking the quiet street below and realized something powerful. I didn't just win a home back. I won myself back. The girl who once cried on the floor was gone. The woman sitting in her rightful home had rebuilt herself from the bones of betrayal. A week later, while sorting mail in the lobby, the concierge whispered, "You know, everyone in this building is proud of you." It was the first time anyone had said that to me. Not because I was lucky, not because I was protected by someone else, but because I fought and I won. My mother hasn't been back since. Calvin changed his number. The family who once thought I was weak now speaks in careful silence when my name is mentioned. And me, I sleep peacefully. Because justice isn't loud. It isn't dramatic. Sometimes it's a quiet door closing. That never opens again.